Greg Mullins is a former Commissioner of Fire and Rescue New South Wales. He's been a firefighter for over 50 years and is acknowledged as one of the world's leading authorities on bushfires. Greg completed his Masters of Management at Macquarie University and has just released his book, Firestorm. Hello, Greg Mullins, and welcome to Leading Lights. You've written a book, Firestorm. Why did you need to write that book?
I wrote the book because during the fire season there were so many myths put out there, mainly by a small number of politicians who I would call climate change deniers. It's getting hotter, drier, windier, we're getting worse fire danger weather, the fire seasons are longer, and they'd come out and say, no, it's just arsonists. No, it's the greenies. They won't allow hazard reduction burning. As I say in my book, I dedicate it to my two little grandsons, and I'm genuinely fearful for the world that they're going to inherit from us.
You started in the fire service with your dad when you were just 12 years old. Tell me about that.
Dad was always just heading off to fires. So he'd been in the Air Force in World War II. When he moved to Terry Hills, knock on the door one night and the local Shire councillor said, you're expected to do your bit and you're ex-military, so you're joining the Bushfire Brigade. And he said, oh, okay. He was 63 years in the local Bushfire Brigade until his death at 93. I remember he fought fires till his early 80s, but I was fascinated as a kid watching him head off on this old ex-army Blitzwagon truck that did about 25 miles an hour maximum down a hill, chug away with about 15, 20 blokes hanging on grimly on the side. No seats or OH&S in those days. So when I was 12, October 1971, there was a big fire locally. All the local fire trucks were on the other side of the national park, and it jumped the creek and came towards a friend's place at Duffy's Forest, and Dad said, jump in the car, we've got to go and help Jeff and Jenny. And that was my first big fire. I was hooked after that, and I fought lots of fires with Dad, and look, he saved my life a few times and the lives of many other people because he was just so good at what he did.
What's it like to head into a firestorm?
I don't know how many thousands of fires I've been to, and not just bushfires, high-rise buildings, factories, houses, but whenever you're going to a fire, you know that there's things will be thrown at you from left field, and any one of those extra factors could take your life or the life of the people you're responsible for. So it's pretty hair-raising, your heart's racing, and any firefighter who tries to tell you, it's nothing, they're not being particularly truthful. So once you're there, you can't leave. And, I've had fires where we've literally had to fight our way out and try to find burnt ground to get onto where we're relatively safe because things just changed in a second.
Have you ever been in a situation where you thought, we're not going to get out of this?
I remember one in particular, even though the date was 18th of November 1977, it just seared into the brain, but a local fire near Narrabeen Lake, and to cut a long story short, I was cut off from the rest of the crew, had fire on both sides of the trail. They had to jump in the truck and drive away because the truck was starting to catch on fire. I had nowhere to go, so I just had to lie down in a bit of a hole in the fire trail and wait for the fire to go across the top of me, and I think I blacked out because it sucked all the air out of it. There was nothing to breathe. It was superheated, it burnt your throat. I had burns across the back of my neck. But I lived to tell the tale. There've been quite a few others where we've been overrun by fires. The fires have gone over the top of us. We've had to shelter inside vehicles. And even in building fires, I've had a couple of, lots of narrow shaves where buildings have collapsed on top of me. I've been buried, nearly fallen out of the window of a high-rise building in North Sydney. Just lots and lots of very dangerous situations, but you learn from every one of them.
And you were never tempted to say, well, that's it, I've survived that one, I'm hanging up my boots?
No, it never entered my mind. That's really interesting looking back, because I discovered late in my career that I had post-traumatic stress disorder, and I remember a psychologist saying, well, little wonder. I'd seen so much death and misery that my emotions had just shut down, and I'd shut out the intrusive memories. I couldn't shut out the nightmares, unfortunately, but I'd pretended to myself that that was normal.
And are you working through all of that now? And is your book part of your working through that process?
Well, interesting question, because writing the book put me back with my psychologist because I put it all together, and in terms of climate change and the impacts, and I knew, and I'd been talking about it a lot, I've been in the media a lot, but when I put it all together, it was quite overwhelming, and I felt quite a bit of despair, because I can't understand anyone with a brain who reads what's going on and reads the science. It's black and white. It's actually black and white. There's no grey.
You were part of a delegation that went to the federal government to tell them that this catastrophe was about to present. What happened when you did that?
Oh, well, basically we didn't go and tell them because they refused to meet with us. So the fires were in full fury by December 2019, when they finally deemed it appropriate for a couple of ministers to meet with us for 20 minutes, which, and us being former fire chiefs from Tasmania, Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales, made our way to Canberra, and we thought for a 1-hour meeting, and then we were told the day before, the ministers only got 20 minutes. So, but it ended up being for an hour. But we wrote to the Prime Minister in April and May saying, you have no idea what's coming down the track. This is going to be the big year, and we need to talk to you about things that can be done. The existing fire chiefs have asked for more funding for aircraft. You've ignored them. You're going to need the military to back up fire services and help in recovery, but the arrangements are convoluted and archaic and just too hard. You need to free them up. And look, there were a range of things, and we wanted to help the government, but we used two terrible words that this government find very hard to utter, and that's climate change.
Could we have avoided last year's fires, do you think?
200 years ago, yeah, sure. If we'd invented solar power and wind power instead of burning coal, oil and gas. But look, no, we knew something very bad was coming. So we wanted to say to the government, you need to listen to the existing fire chiefs, help with the preparation. But the big ticket thing is we must act on emissions. We must join the rest of the world, because the temperature's going that way. And as that happens, we get more and more extreme weather, not just bushfire weather. We get heat waves, more droughts. We get more dry lightning storms that light fires in remote areas we can't get to. More floods, because for every 1 degree of warming, we have 7% more water vapour in the atmosphere. So rains are more severe when they happen, so they overwhelm stormwater infrastructure and we get floods. They just wouldn't listen. And it was a really frustrating time.
What do we need to do to get it right?
We had world leaders in Glasgow for COP26, and Australia, along with Russia, China and India, argued not to put caps on coal. Our Australian government won't sign up to an initiative to limit methane, which is about 21 times worse as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, but it's short-lived. 12 years, about 12 years, and it dissipates, unlike CO2 that goes for decades. That would make an immediate effect, but what did our Deputy Prime Minister say? Everyone will have to get their gun out and shoot their cows. That's our national government? It's almost like a comedy, but it's real. I get so frustrated at the ineptitude of this government, the total lack of leadership. I think worldwide, people are saying, yep, we understand now. We're getting these massive floods in Europe. We're getting bushfires in Siberia, in the Arctic Circle. It's real. So now we move to action. But our government in Australia, the most exposed nation in the world to many of these hazards, will say that we'll do something by 2050, but we won't do anything about 2030, which is what Glasgow is all about. And we'll argue against phasing out coal and methane.
So what is the best outcome that you're hoping for out of the Glasgow summit?
I hope that our Prime Minister has an epiphany, that other world leaders get to him and experts get to him and he listens. We can't afford to feel despair about climate change because we have to fix it. This is a generation. We've reaped the benefits of fossil fuels and advanced technologies and, the wealth and everything that it's brought, but it's our job now to fix it. The bad news is we will get more bad fire seasons, and there's warming locked in until 2050, up until 2050 because of emissions already in the atmosphere. There's nothing we can do about that. What happens after that is totally reliant on what we do now. If we rapidly drive down emissions and get to net zero by 2050, temperatures might stabilise and then eventually, not in my lifetime, come down. And there's one study said by 2040, the weather that drove Black Summer will be average. By 2060, Black Summer could be a normal bushfire season. But what will stop it being a normal bushfire season is change of state from forest to scrubland to grassland to desert. And that's an active process happening around the world because of warming.
I'm going to turn the conversation now to Macquarie University and your time there. Tell me about the course that you did at Macquarie and what made you choose Macquarie.
A lot of people said, leadership management is common sense. Well, no, there's a science to it. And I really wanted to learn. And I'd missed out going to uni when I came straight out of school into the fire brigade, but I'd always wanted to do tertiary studies. So I looked around, I looked at Macquarie. They had a great offering with a Master of Management, but I didn't have an undergrad degree. However, I'd done a lot of fire engineering studies through the Institution of Fire Engineers and a lot of exams through the fire brigade, a lot of technical learning, and I'd done a lot of leadership courses. Macquarie said, we'll accept you into the graduate diploma as long as you get a credit average. But I was able to do that and then did the Masters. So it was wonderful. I lapped it up. It was fantastic. I was working with people from all walks of life, whereas in the emergency services, it's a bit of a bubble. Really enjoyed my studies. I graduated I finished the course in 99, graduated in 2000, and my mother went to Macquarie University. My son and daughter both went to Macquarie University. So it's special.
You have retired, but you continue to be part of your local firefighting group. Tell me a little bit about that.
There's no way in the world, if there were going to be local fires, I wasn't going to be sitting on my fence watching all the firefighters doing all the hard work. So it's my second family. The emergency services broadly are my second family. And I always feel like I'm making a difference, that it's very, very rewarding.
Well, we're very proud of you and thank you very much for your interview today.
Thanks very much, Sandra.